My name is Mahesh, and I'm the founder of Escape Velocity. And we're building what we would call a different type of investment firm, extremely focused on high conviction and putting our money where our mouth is. You know, we live by a rule that makes people from traditional industries like supply chain, finance, consulting, think we've absolutely lost our minds. Namely, any piece of insight that we put out in the world has to have something that's falsifiable. I don't know if this works. Okay, I'm just going to do this without slides. Has to have an insight that's falsifiable. It has to have something where if we're wrong 5 years down the line, we're going to look like total idiots. Because we believe in this idea that high conviction means putting your money where your mouth is. And if you're not willing to put your reputation on the line, you probably haven't done enough work. You know, this idea that failure is only relevant if it's consequential, it's an Elon Musk idea. It's a creative rebrand of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But he's building rockets, so we'll give it to him. But I think it's so foundational to understanding what's going on today. This was previously, when I was talking a little about falsifiability, the only comment that my founder had on my talk today was there was nothing falsifiable. And he was telling me in that to go back to the drawing board. Well, he had one other comment, but in doing so, he was saying something pretty fundamental, which was I didn't have enough conviction and I had to go back and find it. And that's because at the end of the day, as I was saying, putting yourself in public and being wrong in public puts you to the ultimate test of your research. You can only put ideas in public if you're really, really confident in what you're saying. But I feel like this idea, it's lost on society today of being wrong in public and learning in public. I feel like anyone that's succeeded by way of what I would term almost the traditional path, where you worked really hard in high school to go to a great college where you probably paid a little bit too much money for your education, only to go get a job on the other side working in a professional services industry where you spend all of your time, 90, 100, 110 hours a week, doing the same things over and over and over again. You know, in these cultures, it's a travesty because the only thing people can agree on is not to disagree. And the result of that are cultures bereft of risk-taking, scared of suffering, and unwilling to go the extra mile in order to create. You know, that's a real travesty, as far as I can tell, because it's ancient wisdom, especially in this part of the world, that suffering is a great teacher, and that it's often through suffering and pain that we understand what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. In fact, one of the world's most ancient religions, Buddhism, will tell you exactly that. Whether you accept the suffering, you reject it, or you embrace it and move on, you need to acknowledge it, and you need to learn the lessons that it's trying to teach you. Because without that, there is no growth. And I feel like that's just lost on society today. We obviate suffering as a fundamental need. We can't stand it, and we try to fix it however we can, even artificially. You know, in the modern world, I see this almost as use a stimulant to solve any problem. Whether it's a monetary problem, there's an economic stimulus. You have a mental problem, you use a pharmaceutical stimulus. But the result of that, I think, is that cause is getting disaggregated from effect, because the lessons that we get taught through suffering aren't coming through on the other side. And I think the result of that is cultures that are scared of risk-taking. They're scared of trying something new. They're scared of what new opportunities might be able to offer because they're so focused on what they're already doing. You know, Sal and I took a massive risk a couple of years ago when we started Escape Velocity. And I think we would both say it's the best risk we've ever taken. We're not expecting our boats to come in for a number of years, but candidly, the ability to work with founders, driving outside-in technological change at scale, is the most meaningful opportunity there is. And being able to do that every day, working with these smart founders, I think what we've learned is that the world is threatened by what we're trying to build at the end of the day. There's this idea of regulatory capture. You know, a famous VC named Bill Gurley just gave an amazing speech on this. I don't know if you guys have heard it. It's called 2,851 Miles. I would highly recommend you check it out if you haven't. But in it, he makes a very fundamental argument that the biggest reason why startups and companies don't get to scale, the biggest reason why technological change doesn't proliferate faster, is that big companies get so big that they get the government in their pockets and then make it impossible for anyone else to do anything. This happens everywhere, but it happens the most commonly in infrastructure. And you can argue maybe that's on purpose. Maybe some of that is necessary. I mean, infrastructure is such a key input to our societal growth. I don't think we believe in equal outcomes here. We're not socialists, but we believe in equal opportunities for young people. People should have the same access to education at the youngest level. People should have a similar access to nutrition. I mean, these are kinds of things that inform people's lives over 50 to 60 years. And change in that core infrastructure is frightening. The result of that, I think, is that politicians don't see the opportunities associated with DePIN. They only see the threats. The only opportunity they see is to increase their voter base, I guess. But that word opportunity, I think, is why DePIN is so relevant and so valuable. It's a new fundamental primitive to build businesses that have never existed before, using the long tail of the internet to do so. I want to touch on three very quickly, and then I'll talk a little bit about the industry as Michael asked. But the three things that make me the most excited about DePIN is one, you're creating internet-native business models that let you collaborate with strangers. You can work with anyone over the internet, access any skill set. And as media and technology continues to proliferate, it'll be easier and easier for you to find these people. The ability to build businesses with anyone and take advantage of the high levels of education and knowledge that people have across the world is a foundational innovation. But secondly, it's collaborative infrastructure that anybody can contribute to. It's inclusive, radically so. It lowers the barriers to entry for anyone to create a unit of work almost to zero. You know, I for one don't understand why there are so many barriers for people who have skill sets or have labor to contribute to actually contribute. In the US, there's just a long, hard framework to get a visa, to get registrations, licenses, then get a job, then get insurance. DePIN collapses all of that. It's radically inclusive. It doesn't matter what race you are, what religion you are, how much wealth you have. If you can build, you can contribute, and you can earn. And you can earn for providing value to other people. Lastly, and I can't touch on how important I think this is, but DePIN lets anyone own the underlying infrastructure that they use to create their outcomes. This has never existed in the history of the world. Governments and the biggest corporations have always owned our infrastructure. And because they own our infrastructure, they can tell us how to live, they can tell us how to behave, and they can coerce us into actions that might not even be visible to us. DePIN changes that because it makes people accountable for the actions of the infrastructure that they build. And people governing democratically has been the greatest innovation, I think, of the last 2,000 years. So bringing that to corporate structures, letting people own the means of production and actually drive value for themselves and for people around them, for their community, I think is a fundamental and radical innovation. But this opportunity is exactly why I think it'll be so hard. I mean, candidly, Verizon is funding the politicians in the US, not Helium. And the result of that is they're going to fight like hell to keep the new innovations out. They're going to fight like hell to make sure they're going to keep getting their contributions and their paychecks. And that's a hard one to compete with at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that we're driving these radical innovations that create actual cost propositions that are valuable, that are radically inclusive. And that's not a proposition any industry in the world can meet today. You know, when we started EV3 a couple of years ago, there was only 21 projects that classified themselves as DePINs. Through our DePIN Ninja platform today, we map about 2,400. That is crazy growth just for 2 years. But it also speaks to the opportunity set. You know, having started with just DePIN as this broad blanket category, there's now 7 or 8 underlying categories, each of which represents $1 trillion market on its own, each of which has its own consumer problems that they're still trying to solve, each of which has politicians in their pocket. Each of these is a massive opportunity for someone to build something new, for someone to build something different that returns the value back to the people. I'm excited about a lot of these. I think wireless, compute, AI infrastructure, mapping, they've been around for a long time, and they're starting to see some real wins. There are projects out there that are mapping significant portions of the world's roads. There's others that are building foundational telecom networks. You know, one that I've been spending a lot of time on recently is energy, where I think some of the innovations coming to market now are really going to change the way people interact with the grid, with how they source energy, with what they use it for, with how they power their homes. But I'll leave you with this. You know, 5 years ago when I first got into crypto, One of the things that I thought would happen 10 years forward was at some point a group of people would use a blockchain to overthrow a government that was fraudulent. You know, it hasn't happened yet, but we're getting there. In Venezuela, the reason that they know the election results are fraudulent is cryptography. They can prove that the election results were fake. And so as these innovations come to market, I think they're really going to change the way that we interact with our infrastructure, the way we earn from our infrastructure, and most importantly, the futures that we can build for our community by taking responsibility ourselves and getting these things